Hi everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and this video and the next Beyond the Base Game one are going to be interesting for a lot of you, I hope, fingers crossed. Basically, a lot of you have been asking me about a game that I've been singing the praises of called Rune Stones. This is a deck builder by Queen Games that came out a couple of years ago, like 2018 I think it came out, and it's done by Rune Stones, and for most of you, you've never even heard of this game. You're like, okay, what on earth's that? Why is it such a big deal? Well, I've been talking about it a lot, and I've been saying about how it's gotten better over time, and now it's one of my favourite deck builders I have in my entire collection. Queen Games are also going to bring this back into circulation, supposedly in a couple of months' time, and I thought, well, you know what, now is probably a good time for me to do an overdue review for this game and tell you exactly why I like it. So, okay, spoiler alert, I like this game, alright? So expect the rating to be high. But now you get to know what the game is about and what it is about it that I like so much. So without further ado, let's get into some proper detail. Players will take on the role of druids who must prove their skills handling the powerful Rune Stones, summon creatures by magic and benefit from their abilities, all in a search to gain precious gems. These gems must go to the talented dwarfs who know how to use them to make artifacts. As their collection of artifacts grows, the druid's Rune Stones become more powerful. Each stone gives the druid a permanent ability, as well as victory points. The abilities will aid in acquiring gems and artifacts, and the victory points will increase the player's chance of claiming the coveted throne. The game plays out like a traditional deck builder. Players have starter cards and will acquire better cards as the game goes on, and use these card abilities to acquire the gems, which they will then use to acquire the artifacts, which they will use to acquire the Rune Stones. A to B to C to D. Everything goes along the path. But the crux here is that deck building is a little bit different to what you might be used to. Here, instead of playing all your cards in your hand, or just a single card, you play two cards exactly. And these two cards you can resolve in any order. But the twist is that the numbers at the top are relevant for which card you get to keep. Once you have resolved both abilities, the card with the highest value is trashed from your deck and effectively out of the game, which means that your deck basically trashes itself over time, and you have to continuously acquire new cards into your deck, hopefully ones that still align with your strategy, in order to keep your deck going and not have it run out of steam. Collecting the artifacts is essentially set collection, but the bigger the set you trade in, the more points you get, but you still only get one Rune Stone. So you have to decide whether you're going to go for more points and less game breaky powers, or more often than not, less points and more game breaky powers. The druid with the most victory points at the end of the game, guess.
Of course!
So with duration, the box quotes an hour, and that's pretty accurate. Here, it depends on how many players you've got for the most part. The game doesn't scale in terms of points. It's get to 65 and there you go. The setup's not really any different with more players. You have the same amount of Rune Stones, the same amount of gems and everything. Simply, all you have to do is just give somebody a new starter deck. But with two players, if you know what you're doing, you could crank this game out in 45 minutes with relative ease, to be honest. With three of you, you are talking about an hour, maybe an hour and a quarter, and four players will probably take you about 90 minutes, and that's assuming you are teaching the game to some new players. I have played games of this though with four of us who knew what we were doing, and we've cranked out 4-player games of this in an hour. It really does depend on whether anybody is subject to analysis paralysis or if you are teaching brand new gamers, but yeah, there's no reason this game should take any longer than 90 minutes, and if it does, you need to have words with your players.
Well, we're waiting.
The setup and takedown is pretty straightforward as well. You essentially get your Rune Stones on the board, everybody gets one of each gem, you get your starter deck of cards, big deck of cards in the middle with a tableau, and you're pretty much sorted for the most part. I mean, the game setup is pretty straightforward. Even the takedown's not particularly difficult, there's no insert in the box to speak of, but if you've got everything in baggies, you just put gems, stones, cards in the bag, done. Pretty straightforward. You'll be up and running in no time, and you will have packed it away in no time. So going on to ease of play, and one thing I always like to credit Queen Games on is that their rulebooks are generally pretty good, and this is no exception. You've got multiple languages in the box, although annoyingly I keep picking this one up the wrong way round. It's either English or French, and I always seem to pick it up by the French side. But there's not many pages you have to look at. I mean, we're talking, what, like 6 to 8 pages, and 2 of them are the setup, but you've got full-on setup diagrams for how to set the game up. Everything is labeled out in a color code system, so when it's talking about the free actions that you can do, like summon creatures or utilize abilities, they're written in giant like text on the page. You can see it right there. You see the yellow, the blue, and the green there? So every time you're looking for the rulebook for this stuff, it's easy to find. Nothing was ambiguous. There's pictorial representation for everything in this game. Like, everything is explained in screenshot. And honestly, playing this is an absolute breeze. The main time you're ever going to need to look at the rulebook is just for the Rune Stones themselves. And, well, you have one page. They're all there, written out. Nothing was difficult to understand, and some of them have even got pictorial representations of how they work. This is such an easy game to pick up and play. Honestly, this game is on the lightness level of games like Dominion, Star Realms, and Dale of Merchants when we're talking about deck builders. I dare say you could teach this to somebody who has never played a deck builder in their life, and they will pick this up pretty easily. Yeah, the idea of playing 2 cards and discarding the highest value one isn't something that's seen in other deck builders, but it's a pretty straightforward concept. It's all on the card, and honestly, I have taught this game to somebody who has not seen a deck builder ever, and they picked it up. Not a problem. And I also can't stress enough how great this little addition is. It doesn't affect me at all, but it does affect a friend of mine, and believe me, she was more than pleased to see that this was in the game. The cards are double-sided, and not double-sided as in front and back, double-sided as in left to right. Yes, the ability is replicated on both sides of the card, meaning that left-handed players can play this easily and fan the cards in their hand so that they can see what the abilities do. So right-handed or left-handed, you won't have a problem playing this card game. How many other deck builders do that?
You mean you have to use your hands? That's like a baby's toy.
The iconography is intuitive, it's nice and colourful, everything's clear. Honestly, this scores top marks for ease of play. So for tactics and strategy, this is where we get into the crux of why I love this game so much. 2 main aspects in general. Firstly, the deck building part itself. I love a pure deck builder. Pure deck builders are like one of my most favorite genres that there is. I'm not the biggest fan when it mixes deck building with other stuff, although in the cases of things like Viscounts and Arnak and a couple of other games, there are exceptions to that rule. I still like the deck building, but the other part has to really do well to make up for that. But I just love a pure deck builder. Dominion, Star Realms, Valley of the Kings, Dale of Merchants, you name it, I love a pure deck builder. This is definitely a pure deck builder. And you don't even have that much in the way of a deck per se. You could buy as many cards as you like and have a huge deck, but unless you've got the Rune Stone that gives you a hand size of 6, you're probably going to take a while to cycle through to your best cards. What happens though is that as you play the cards, the higher value card trashes out of your deck. So if you do nothing but play cards, you're going to have to eventually buy more cards, otherwise you're running with like a free card deck. Although to be fair, if you've got a strategy in place with the right Rune Stones, you can feasibly play half of this game with a 4-card deck. Trust me, I've done so, and it has worked. But it gives you the incentive to keep buying more cards. And it also gives you that really cool, easy, but yet in-depth decision of which 2 cards are you going to play. The other actions like buy cards are pretty straightforward, and forge artifacts is pretty straightforward. But when you're choosing which 2 cards to play, deciding which 2, knowing that one of them's no longer going to be in your deck, and it might be that card you really like, it gets you multicolored gems all the time, but it's like, but if I play it, then I can't have it again. When should I play it? Now? Is now a good time? Is it too soon? Or hang on a minute, maybe if I grab that card, it's got a higher value. I'll grab that one first, and then next turn, or when I've got these 2 cards together, I'll play them both. Then I get to keep that card I really like and chuck away this one. All your starter cards are high value, so they will discard pretty much like from the get-go, and soon you will be running a deck full of new cards that you've purchased. And I just find that such a cool concept. No other deck builder has done this. Normally deck builders want you to go out of your way to trash a card, and sometimes that works well. I do tend to like playing deck builders in that style, you know, trimming my deck nice and even so that it's very efficient. But some deck builders really do make you jump through a million hoops to trash cards, and that's not always a good thing. Here though, you haven't got to worry about that. There's no other way to trash cards in your deck except for play the abilities. Nice and simple. And then you've got the Rune Stones themselves. 8 cool powers, all of which are good. None of the 8 powers in this set are bad. If you know how to use them, they will work wonders for you. But the fact that you can choose from all 8 and in different combinations gives you a lot of different strategies that you can do. Am I gunning for a bunch of cards that give me victory points every time I play them? Well, then the one that gives me boost to those sort of cards would be a good Rune Stone to grab. Maybe I want to have a hand size of 6. I'm just acquiring lots of cards and I want to have the options. Maybe I want to have all those either-or abilities turn into ands. There's a lot of different ways that you can play it, and because there's only so many of each Rune Stone, I think it's like one less than the number of players, you do have to make certain that other players don't exhaust the pile before you get a chance to do it. And how quickly are you going to acquire these Rune Stones? Immediately? Grab 2 artifacts and get a Rune Stone? Well, that's all well and good, but you only get 3 points. You need to get to 65. Take your time and get those 5 artifacts you need to make a full set. You get 1 Rune Stone just like before, but you get 15 points. You get 5 times more points than the other player who decided to play things sooner. Both strategies work. I've tried it the slow way, I've tried it the fast way. Both are enjoyable and both can work. So you can really play this game how you want. But because it's a simple game to play, you don't feel bogged down by unnecessary complexity or by too much like clunky mechanics or anything. You just get to play a good streamlined deck builder, and I can't stress enough how much we need more streamlined games these days. Now, before we get into the second half of this review, please consider leaving a thumbs up on the video. It means the world to me to know you appreciate the content. Also, don't forget that this channel is sponsored by Zatu.co.uk. In the description, you will find a code for 5% discount off anything you purchase off their website. If you like the sound of this game or anything else I've reviewed on the channel, and you want to save yourself a bit of money while purchasing some great games, consider visiting Zatu.co.uk and making a purchase today. Now, on to the rest of this review. For aesthetics, do I really need to defend this one? This game is beautiful.
Ooh, you good looking. You're hot.
Look at that board with all the pieces on it. Different color plastic gems. Really nicely laid out cards with good artwork. One of the most beautiful boards I've seen in a deck building game ever. In fact, in most games, it's one of the most beautiful boards I've seen. Everything just pops on the table and it's always turning heads when people walk on by. Add to that the clear graphic design, the iconography is easy to understand, the left and right-handed sides of the cards, meaning that anybody, no matter which left-handed or right-handed, can play it without a problem. It just really is such a step up for Queen Games in terms of their aesthetics, and not to say that Queen Games tend to look bad aesthetically. In fact, to be honest, generally they look pretty decent, but this is definitely in the upper echelons of production quality for what could have just been a straightforward simple deck builder with barely any components in that. I mean, you compare something like this to the likes of Dominion, there is no contest here. This is like eons above that kind of level. Now, you are stuck with a fairly basic insert, but eRaptor does do an insert for this game, and I think I've covered it on the channel before. The insert is fine. It caters for expansions, but it kind of, you could do without it, honestly. But I do recommend these. This is not so much going to factor into my review rating. This is just like a top tip for you. These are special overlays that eRaptor sell, and they go over the player board. So you have like basically a strong wooden back. You screw in the plastic overlay. Doesn't require any like major skill or anything, but basically it gives you this really cool overlay that you can slot the artifacts in so they stay in one place. You can put your gems and your little forge tokens in places, and the Rune Stones can slot in on the top there. These are really cool. I could have actually done without the insert, but those are really cool to get. As I say, top tip in case you're into that sort of thing. Now, it's harsh to really call this a weak link of the game and the immersion factor. Okay, it's a deck builder. Deck builders don't tend to have strong themes, and so I tend to, give little weighting to the immersion category, but I still like to talk about it. Here, it is a fairly cut and paste dry affair, really. You're not really like a druid. It's just, here's your cards, they get your gems, they get your points, they get your various rolls of a die, and you play them in a certain way and get the artifacts. honestly, the theme is neither here or there. You could replace this with pretty much any theme and it would work, but at least this setting does allow for the great artwork, as I've already mentioned, and just something a little bit more interesting than, well, I don't know, could you imagine if this was a game about deck building, iron and coal? Please don't make a game like that, I beg of you. But honestly, as I say, you're not playing this for a druidic theme, but then you kind of get this with Queen games anyway. How many of Queen games would you consider thematic? That's not what they do. They give you a setting, it may look cool, and then they care more about the mechanics. And that is why you're playing this game. And coming from me, who's normally huge on theme, to be able to look past that and see what's really enjoyable about this game, come on, that's gotta speak volumes. And then we've got the replay value. Now, this is where it starts off well and then kind of tapers a little bit. I've got 2 expansions in this game, but I'm not going to talk about them now, and I'm not going to use this as part of my rating. I'll do a separate Beyond the Base Game video for that, and I'll explain why they're really good to get. But I'm talking about the base game alone. You've got a decent deck of cards there. The abilities are rinse repeat in some aspects, but you've got enough cards there that you will see different ones each game. You certainly shouldn't go through the entire deck unless you're playing with 4 players and you drag the game out a bit. The Rune Stones, you are limited to those 8, and I would have liked if maybe they put more of them in the backs. I mean, you get more in an expansion, but again, we'll get to that in another video. Can you imagine though if they put in like 16 in the base box alone? The amount of replay value would be insane. Now, you will only get 4 Rune Stones in a game, and there's a lot of different ways that you can get 4 stones out of 8 that are available, so you are going to formulate different strategies with the Rune Stones as well as the cards you end up getting. But eventually you are going to have seen everything in the game and probably will want one of those expansions that we'll get onto in another video. So you've got enough stuff in this game to keep the replay value good for a time, but eventually it is going to run out of steam in that regard. Not to say that the game gets boring once you get to that point, but it just means that you won't necessarily see anything brand new. So before I get onto the actual verdict, let me just give you a quick little story here. For the while, I tended to avoid this game. Not like actively avoid it, but it's just I would see it on a table, I'd see some other people playing it, and I'd kind of bypass it because I had other games to look at. Then a friend of mine who knew I liked deck builders told me more about the game and said, no, this is a light deck builder. It has a twist that you've not seen before. You'll really like it. So I figured, okay, at some point I'll play it. Then didn't play it for a while. Then decided, right, fine, I'm just gonna buy the game outright and play it because I need to find out what this is all about. And at first, I really liked it. Not like loved it, but I liked it. It was kind of like a 7 or 8 at first. But the more I've played it, the more I've really appreciated how streamlined it is, how great those Rune Stones are to get, to change what you're gonna do each game, and just how fast-paced it is. And I love that twist of playing the 2 cards and having the highest one trash. It's a new twist on deck building that I think other deck builders should try to use. I think there's some that could really benefit from that. It's a cool concept and it's unique to this deck builder, at least as far as I'm aware it's unique to this deck builder. I don't know of any others that do that. But now over time, as I've got the expansions, the game has just gotten better and better for me. But again, I'm rating this in the base game alone. I still think it's fantastic as a light deck builder. You need to give this one a shot if you're a fan of the genre, particularly if you're looking for one that is light enough to play quickly, to play easily, and to potentially teach to someone who's never seen a deck builder before. Perhaps you're getting bored with the likes of Dominion and Star Realms, using them all the time as your guinea pigs. Well, now you have this one to use. And believe me, it's worth it. Now the replay value will taper after a point, and you're not exactly playing this for the theme, but it doesn't take long to play, it's really easy to play, it's got some good amount of depth without being like too meaty, and certainly without being like light as a feather, but also looks gorgeous on the table. It's definitely one of the best looking deck builders that there are out there. Now certainly the game has gotten better for me with the expansion, so you will find out more about that in the next Beyond the Base Game video, but honestly, this game is still such a good one I like to play. It started off as worthy of an endorsement, And over time, even the base game alone, if you told me there was no expansions in it, I'd still want to play it as often as I can. This is definitely getting a solid 9 out of 10 for me with a seal of distinction. Yeah, I know, spoiler alert, you knew I was going to give this a high rating, but at least hopefully this gives you an indication as to why I love the game so much. Now, will this game reach a 10 out of 10 rating, a legendary status with the expansions included? You're gonna have to wait for a Beyond the Base Game video for that. But yeah, this is such an underrated deck builder. We hear about all the other deck builders all the time, and even some of the hybrids like Arnak and June and Clank and stuff like that lately, but nobody talked about Rune Stones. It just sort of came, nobody spoke of it, and then it went. But I believe it's starting to come back into circulation in the next couple of months, from what I've heard on the grapevine. And if it does, I strongly recommend you check this game out. It really is one of the best light deck builders around. It's a game that I am so sorry that I didn't get to play before, you know, my friend suggested it to me, but yeah, I owe him one for that. So yeah, Rune Stones, a fantastic game, definitely one worth trying. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please leave a thumbs up on the video. It means the world to me to know that you appreciate the content. Don't forget that this channel is sponsored by Zatu.co.uk. If there's something on my shelf that's been taking your fancy, or perhaps this one has come into stock, then use my code in the description, use it, and get 5% discount off your entire basket of games. It helps support the channel, and it will help you save some pennies as games are starting to get more and more expensive. And if you want to check out more content on the channel, then you can check out my latest 2 reviews that I've done. Firstly, Immersion, one of the hotness games of 2021 right now. But if you want something a bit more light and fluffy, then consider Die of the Dead if you want to roll dice in little coffin shakers. See my videos for more, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care, and remember, it's only a game. Bye for now.